Welcome to this week's episode of The Savvy Author. I'm Clara Rose. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I invite you to join us every Friday where we talk about all the things you need to know to be a savvy author. We'll talk about things like brainstorming and blueprinting your book. We'll talk about staging and formatting your book. We'll talk about publishing options and so much more. So welcome. I hope we see you again. And of course, if you're returning, welcome back, my friends. Today we're going to talk about a piece that's really important that I think a lot of authors struggle with, and that's titles. As a matter of fact, just a couple of days ago, I spoke with a new client, and he'd been working on his book for a really long time, and this title had been around for a really long time, and it literally was no longer relevant to the day and age that we live in. So we are working on a new title for him, but I wanted to just point out how very important titles are. And so today's topic is going to be all about that. Titles really do matter. So let's talk about those. How memorable is your book title? It's your first opportunity to capture the attention of a new reader. So when somebody is looking at your book on the shelf, or they're looking on Amazon, or wherever it is that they're seeing a digital copy of your book or a physical copy of your book, is the title capturing their attention? Super important, because aside from the cover, the look and feel of the cover, the title is the second thing that they look at. First, of course, is it eye-catching, and we'll talk about good covers on another episode. But today we're going to specifically be talking about the title and how memorable it is. And then, of course, what does it even take to create a memorable title? And there are some no-nos that you want to avoid when you're talking about titles. So let's dive in today and get started on relevant titles. Your titles should be relevant. And I have a little acronym for you, and I'm a fan of acronyms, so you'll see them a lot on this show. They must resonate with your reader. They're going to expand the possibilities of what could potentially possibly be in this book. They're going to leverage their interest. It's going to echo your voice. Got to sound like you. It's always crafty. It's never corny. And we want them to be timeless and not too trendy. A good title is a promise about the content of the book or the chapter that comes before it. Now, there is more than just the title of your book that matters. The title of your book they're going to see first. It's going to live on the spine. It's going to live on the front. In fact, your title might go on your spine. Your subtitle isn't going to go on your spine, but it's on the cover of your book. Also, it's going to go in all of your marketing material, so it matters as well. So when you're thinking about your title or your subtitle, it's important that they're relevant. But beyond that, we have other titles. In fact, the beginning of every single chapter in your book will usually have a title as well. Now, I've seen a few where they're just numbered. I think that it is interesting when people do that. I think they're missing another branding opportunity, another opportunity to capture somebody's attention, for it to mean something for them. So not only when you look at grab your favorite book and do this, open up to the table of contents and have a look at what that looks like. So if you're looking at the table of contents and it doesn't have a title in it, how will you know what actually happens or what's offered in that particular chapter? Makes sense, doesn't it? So the titles that we create for those chapters also need to be relevant. Right? They need to resonate with the reader, expand the possibilities. All of those things still need to be true on your title pages. Okay, I'm going to give you an example out of our last book, my last book. This particular one, chapter 1, is Passion Matters. So my co-author wrote the secondary. I wrote all of the hair strategy and mindset for the new entrepreneur. I wrote the strategy chapters. Debbie wrote the mindset chapters, because that's what she specializes in. So we named our chapters accordingly. So my chapter is Passion Matters, and hers was Inspired Passion. So see how we made it relevant to what we were talking about? It was crafty, but it wasn't too corny. It related to what we were talking about in those chapters. So as we went through the book and created it, we followed that same pattern. I talked about strategy, she talked about mindset, and the titles reflected that. So as you're thinking about your book, think about more than just your title and your subtitle on the cover. Think about how you're going to pull your reader through your book in a way that's going to be cohesive and make sense for them. And part of that, of course, is going to be all about your titles, which is why we're talking about titles today. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about briefly the SMILE concept, and I have a book for you that we're going to talk about today. The SMILE concept from Alexandra Watkins. So she says that these are the 5 qualities of a super sticky name. Now, she is the author of the book, Hello, My Name is Awesome, where I'm pulling some great stuff for you today. And let's see what she has to say about that. So the SMILE concept is the 5 qualities, and here they are. It is suggestive. It evokes something about, she's saying brand, because that's what she specializes in. I'm saying about your book. It's meaningful in some way. It resonates with your audience. It's imagery, so it's visually evocative, and it aids in memory, helps to bring things back to someone's mind or recollection. She says legs. This just means it lends itself to a theme for extending mileage on it. And then it's emotional. It moves people in some way. So those are the things that she says are the qualities that make a name sticky. And that just means that it sticks, right? It matters in some way. Now, why are we listening to Alexandra Watkins? Now, this isn't her latest version. She has a new copy that came out, I think, in 2019. It's a new edition, if you will. She owns a company called Eat My Words, and what she literally does, coolest company ever, right? If it was in my wheelhouse totally, I might even have considered doing it, but she is hired by really big names to help them name things. Isn't that the coolest job ever? She gets to name things for a living. I think that's awesome. And Hello, My Name is Awesome is the book that she wrote, and it is her brand awareness book for her business, which is, of course, what I specialize in, helping people to create brand awareness books that support their business, ministry, cause, or brand, give them some added exposure, a way to organically generate leads for their business, ministry, cause, or brand. And she does this so beautifully with this book, and that's why we're pulling some stuff from it today, but it's why I've been using this particular book and why I have an old copy for many years now to help my authors to get awesome names for their titles, subtitles, chapters, and even articles promoting their things. Okay, so let's move on beyond the SMILE concept. She's got more stuff for us to learn. She has something called the scratch test. So the scratch test is simply this. These are the 7 deadly sins, what she calls them, and she calls them the scratch test. So these are our no-nos. Number 1, spelling challenge. We don't want to pick names that look like really they're just a typo. Right? You might have been trying to be clever, but they look like a typo. Nobody gets it. You don't want to be a copycat. So it's so similar to the competitor's name or a competitor's name that it's just obvious that you have copied them. You know, it's the McDonald's and the MacDonald's concept. Too close to somebody else's title, just cheesy. It's restrictive. You don't want to limit future growth with something by using a name that's too restrictive. Now, she's specifically, of course, talking about a business or a product. And if you call yourself an accountant, and you later want to expand your business, if your name is the Real Accountant or the Savvy Accountant, which isn't a bad name if you're an accountant, the Savvy Accountant, you can't expand that beyond those services later effectively in your name. So that's what she's talking about. Annoying. You don't want it to be forced or frustrate your customers. Nothing worse than an annoying name. And then tame. You don't want it to be flat, undescriptive, uninspired, or just plain boring. And then, of course, cure of knowledge makes sense only to insiders. Now, you know what I'm talking about here. That's that jargony stuff that only people in your industry or in your circle are going to understand. And then hard to pronounce is always a no-no. If it's not obvious and it's unapproachable, people are not going to talk about it. This is always true for everything, but especially for a book. Consider this. What if somebody read your book and went, oh my gosh, I read the best book ever, and they want to tell someone about it, but they really don't know how to say the name? Who wants to look like an idiot or look foolish when they're recommending a book when they say the name wrong? We've seen it happen. I come from a state where there's a lot of Native American names for cities and such. And I will hear people say the name of the cities incorrectly, and I think, that's not how you say that. They don't know any better. I don't think they're foolish for not understanding or not knowing, but that's just to make my point. If somebody doesn't necessarily know how to say something, they may not say it at all. We don't want to ever be the reason, our title to ever be the reason that they don't recommend our book to somebody else. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Okay, we don't want to run out of time, and Alexandra has lots of lessons for us, so let's move right along. As you're picking your name for your book, now this isn't like the deciding factor, but the domain name matters. When you're deciding on a title, check to see if the domain name is available. It might be handy to own the domain name as well as the name. Now, I love for my authors as soon as we've landed on a for sure name. Now, sometimes things change as the book unfolds, but if you've done a great job of the brainstorm and blueprint process where we've dug all of that information out of your brain and put it into an outline, and you follow the outline, we're pretty secure that the name is good. Unless we have a bolt flash of lightning somewhere in the creative process where we go, oh, this is a better name, we have to change it. Doesn't happen all that often, but occasionally. But once you think you've landed on a good solid name, go look for the domain name. It doesn't hurt to own it, and it's a great place to set up a landing page to say, hey, coming soon to a bookstore near you, or, get on my mailing list if you'd like advance notice that it's coming out, or, hey, do you want to be part of my launch team? I have this coming out in, whenever. So it's just a great tool to have. Domain names are inexpensive. Snap it up. If you end up not using it, what have you spent? $15 maybe? Totally worth the investment. All right, let's move on. Alexandra has some secrets to share with us, and I wanted to just pile on my own on top of the secrets that she shares. So secret number one that she shares in her book, which you'll have to get, not all names are taken. So buy the domain name for the book title or subtitle if it's available, but do a search because the perfect domain name could be waiting for you. You may find as you think I've settled on this particular title, you go searching for the domain name and you find something even better. It's worth the time spent. So that was her secret number one. Secret number two from Alexandra, make a lowball offer. Don't pay too much. It's nice to have the domain name, but it's absolutely not a necessity. So you can negotiate the parked or listed price, as it's usually not set in stone. I buy a lot of domain names because every time I have an idea where I think, oh, that's good. That's good stuff right there. There's a book in that. I go and buy the domain name if it's available. I've been known to be sitting in a conference taking notes and have somebody say something and have it strike a chord in my brain and think, I wonder if that domain is available. I'll pull out my GoDaddy account to see if it's available, and if it is, snag it. right? Just for a year. I don't buy them long term because I don't know whether I'm going to always use them, but I'll snag it up. It's a small investment, and I have sold them for more money, which you can do later if you don't use them. If you don't use them and you don't care, you can just let them lapse after a year. You haven't lost much, but what if that idea, that spark, that moment turned into an amazing book? An amazing book that became a bestseller, or an amazing book that changed lives of people. You don't know where it's going to lead, so take the opportunity to snag it if you can. If you find one that somebody else already owns, don't be afraid to make a low ball offer on it. People do that to me all the time. They reach out and say, hey, I have this domain name. I think you might be interested based on your brand. Here's what I'm asking for it. If I really want it and it's really good, I might say, I'll give you $100 for that. Sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. In fact, it doesn't really matter because maybe I'm not going to use it anyway, but if I think it's really gold, sometimes I'll snap it up. So don't be afraid to make that offer. All right, next secret from Alexandra. Secret number 3, buy the misspellings. So purchase the misspellings or your competitors might. So own the common misspellings of a name or product. So she's saying the name or product, but I'm specifically saying about a book. But if somebody commonly misspells a particular word, it's going to happen in the Google search. So if you already own that one, you just purchase the most common misspellings for something. And then you can just point those to the page that you want them, to the correct page, the correct domain name, so you haven't lost that person into the abyss of the internet just because they misspelled it. Lots of people are dyslexic. I have dyslexic moments. My daughter's very dyslexic. And so that's just a way to capture them easily. So let's say, all right, Miss Alexandra, what is secret number 4? Before we run out of time today, URLs don't need keywords. We're talking about specifically for your book here. Single page topic pages are ranking well currently, so they're a perfect idea for your book. And Google is no longer favoring keyword-rich domain names. Our keywords live inside our content now, so on the page itself. So I mentioned the single topic landing page because I'm having a lot of success with authors with a page specifically for their book, outside of living separate from a website if they have one, living separate from their Facebook page or their LinkedIn page or wherever they connect online with their community. This lives someplace else. It's a separate landing page, and it just talks about your book, just your book, nothing else. That's where we want those keyword-rich SEO stuff to live, is on that page. So when someone does a Google search, hopefully you own the domain name, but maybe you don't. Hopefully you found other ways to point them to that page, but maybe you haven't. But the keywords will always help rank you better and get you there. So that's just good advice from Miss Alexandra. All right, her next secret number 5 is, I believe we're on secret number 5. Longer names are okay. Initials are hard to remember. A descriptive name is better even if it's long. For instance, Dollar Shave Club versus DSC, or Rapid City Book Nook versus RCBN. People are not going to remember the letters, initials that you rattle off to them. They're not going to. They may think, oh, that's simple. That's easy to remember. It's going to be easy for you to remember because it's the name of your book, right? But it's not going to be easy for them to remember, especially if they haven't made the connection between the name of your book, or maybe you didn't even mention the name of your book, not make that connection between that and the domain name where they can find out more about your book. So be careful that you're using something that makes sense to people and that's easy to remember. I have a great example that I have been giving for years, because it happened a lot of years ago now, when we first founded Rosedale Publishing. I so bad wanted to purchase rosedalepublishing.com. because it was an awesome name. It's the name of the new publishing house that we founded, and I really wanted that. But they wanted $30,000 for it. And I was not spending $30,000 on a domain name, so we came up with a different one. It's a descriptive one. And in fact, we have this book to thank, and Alexandra and her business to thank for us thinking of that, because it was outside of our thought process at the time. Right? So we came up with crafting your message. Right? It's very descriptive. We help people craft their message for the world. I use that to this day, crafting your message. So we have an email address, we have a domain name, crafting your message. You can always send stuff to hello@craftingyourmessage.com, and yours truly, as the chief editor, will get that email. That's what I'm talking about. It's a company online called We Love Peanut Butter. It's not the name of their company, mind you, but that's their website, welovepeanutbutter.com. There's lots of other ones out there, so think beyond the scope of what your topic is about. If you can't find your domain name, the world is not going to end. The name of your book, I mean, as a domain name, world doesn't end. Use a subtitle. Come up with a descriptive name. Whatever it is that's going to send people to your book and get their attention online. Okay, let's move along. Titles matter. Titles really do matter. If your book becomes a bestseller, your title is attached to it for life and to you for life. So choose it carefully, my friend. Don't make people scratch their head. We want to make them wonder. Don't make a promise that you can't keep in the book. Always deliver on the promise of your title. Don't beat around the bush. Do address the issue. Don't focus on the problem. Do offer the solution in your book. Don't tug on emotion just for the sake of tugging on emotion. We want to evoke the desired response, but we're not just playing with their emotions. Don't limit your options. We want to expand the possibilities when we title something. And then I've said it more than once, but don't be too trendy. The goal is to be timeless. We'd like it for it to be relevant today, and we'd like it to be relevant in 10 years when your book title is still going to be available to the world. We don't want to use a title that's so trendy that the future generations aren't going to know what the heck you're talking about. And then don't be corny, but be crafty instead. It is always the first inclination for authors to try and be too crafty. A little bit crafty is awesome, as in, hello, my name is awesome. But if it's too corny, then it can take away from the seriousness of the work that you're putting out into the world. And depending on your particular topic, what brand awareness you're trying to bring to the world, even crafty might not be relevant for your audience. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about that particular thing. All right. Today we did a review, and so I'm going to start throwing these reviews into our regular cycle. And today we did a book review on Hello, My Name is Awesome. You see that right there is her newest version. I think it came out in 2019. It is great information for naming absolutely anything except the kids. I like to just make that little pun at the end because seriously, other than kids, I have used this baby to name so many different things. All the things that she has to say are just relevant to anything that you're naming. Super relevant and helpful when you're naming your book, my friend. If you are not to the point of naming your book yet, but you're starting to think about it, grab yourself a copy of her book, Hello, My Name is Awesome. Her name is Alexandra Watkins, and she is the owner of Eat My Words. You can find her online, and she now even has, I don't know how long it's been around, but she now has a program, an online program that you can take for the do-it-yourselfers who want to learn about it, but like a course instead of reading a book. So that's there for you as well. You can check her out. And then, of course, before we run out of time, I want to just say the next Brainstorm and Blueprint class is about to start. We start a new one every 6 weeks-ish if you're not ready yet. But the Brainstorm and Blueprint is starting soon, and we are going to together capture all those book ideas that are floating around in your head, organize those ideas into topics that will make sense to your reader, and pull them through the book. We're going to craft an outline of your book that the industry calls a book build, but I like to use the term blueprint. It's the map that we're going to follow as we actually get the work done to get your book created, and then create a strategy for the successful completion and publishing of your completed manuscript. And then when we're all done with those pieces, at the end of the Brainstorm and Blueprint Masterclass, we plug you into the accountability group where everybody is actually getting the writing done. There's no need to do it alone, but I'm telling you, if you don't have some form of accountability, it is too easy to put it off. And I see it often when I meet new people who say things like, well, I've been working on my book for 10 years. That is procrastination, my friend, and the way around that is to have a plan, a strategic and intentional plan to get stuff done. The accountability makes that happen for you, and the Brainstorm and Blueprint Masterclass is how we get you ready to get the writing done. Of course, yes, you still have to put your butt in the seat and actually do the writing, but having a place where you can show up daily or weekly or whatever works for your writing schedule and say, hey, I got my next chapter done, or I'm stuck with this topic. Who has an idea that can help me? It's a great way to collaborate with other writers, a great way to say, hey, I'm looking for X, and somebody who is farther along on the journey as a savvy author can step up and help you out. Okay. Grab your copy of Hello, My Name is Awesome. Before we go, I want to say thank you so much to Tampa Bay Multimedia and WeBeam TV, where we're at today here in the studio.